Alright, so during the last class, I had you guys try the performance event practice for the map test, and there were some questions on there that I want to go over, and specifically I want to talk about the graphing section because it's confusing and they make it confusing on purpose, and I want to make sure that we are ready to go when it comes time for the test. So you're going to practice with that today. So let's look at the screen. So this is what you came upon when you were looking at the practice. So this side over here gives you the science investigation that they're doing. It tells you how they did the experiment, steps 1 through 6, and then you can scroll down to see a picture. So make sure that you always, if you have the ability to scroll, that you go ahead and do that. These tools up here are just used for different things. This one is the highlighter, so if you need to highlight certain parts that are important. Sticky notes, so if you need to keep a little note off to the side to explain or to remember something for later. The magnifying tool just magnifies what you need to see. And then the ruler is actually the tool that you should have used to answer this first question. So over on this left side, it explains the experiment, and then over here is where on the right side is where it starts to ask you questions. So to use the ruler, you would just click on it. You can kind of move your mouse over here to rotate the ruler. So in this case, you needed to rotate it a little bit so that you could measure the length. Always remember to start it at the 0 and then rotate it so that you could get it. Remember that it shows you the units here, so when you answered this question, you should have put 5, and then you should have put cm for centimeters. When you don't want the ruler anymore, you can press the little X that's here, or you can just click the ruler button and it goes away. Alright, so today we're really going to focus on question 6, which was the graphing question. There is a question on the map test where you have to graph, so it's really important that we go over this and that we know how to use these tools. So I'm going to go through this practice that it gives you, and then you all on your own will take the data table that was on the bottom of your Do Now, and you will be graphing that data table. So first of all, you can click Enlarge here, hopefully, and then it'll bring up your data table. And if you want to keep it open, you can just keep it and kind of drag it to any part of your screen. And then you click to respond here. Before we do that, when you press OK at the bottom, that's when it's going to take it away and bring it back into here. So before we actually start on the graph, you always want to read what it wants you to do. So it says, use the data from table 1, here's table 1, to construct a line graph on the grid below. For number of pennies, use only the averages, including the one you calculated. So it tells you that you need to make a line graph, and it tells you that you graph only the averages. So that's why it's so important to read the directions, because it's pretty much telling you what's the important information you need to put in the graph. I disagree with what they're having you do in this graph, because they ask you to make a line graph, and in my opinion and Ms. Zeider's opinion, because we were working on it on Friday, you really should be making a bar graph. But we're going to make a line graph. We're going to make a line graph this time, and then you'll also be making a line graph for the data that I gave you. So click here to open it up. Let me drag this over. Woo. All right. So now you have your data table over here, and then you have your graph over here. So the important part first is to make sure that you label everything. So remember, your independent variable always goes on the x-axis, and your dependent variable always goes on the y-axis. So for our independent variable down here on the x-axis, we are going to put the floating surface area of the raft. So remember, this is what they were changing, and I want to put my units there, even though I can't put squared. Best we can do. So that's our independent variable. That's what we were changing in the experiment. And then we were measuring the number of pennies to sink the raft. So that's what goes on our y-axis because that is the dependent variable. And actually, we're going to make sure that this says average number of pennies because we're only graphing the average. And then you just click out, and that's how you would label your y and your x. You also want to give your graph a title. The best way to title a graph is to do your independent variable versus your dependent variable. So you're going to do surface area of raft versus number of pennies to sink. Okay? And as you can see, it pops up and tells you it's too many. Do as much as you can in there. Make sure you have a good title. Okay, so one thing that a lot of us struggle with is knowing what to number the increments for your x and y axis. So when you make a graph, I've told you this before, you want to make sure that you look at your highest data point and you want to divide it by the number of boxes that you have available, or the number of spaces. So in this case, if we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces. And our highest data point for floating surface area of raft is 225. So if we go to our calculator and we do 225 divided by 10, that's going to give us 22.5. Now 22.5 is not the easiest thing to count up by. So usually you take the number that you get and you round it up to the next kind of easy number to count by. Don't round down, always round up. So in this case, we're actually going to round this all the way up to 25 because that's easiest to count by. So you don't have to put 0 because the 0 is here. So you're going to do 25 and then 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200, 225, whoops, and 250. So again, the 0 is implied, so 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75. We're counting by 25s each time. So that takes care of our x-axis. For the y-axis, our highest data point is 96. Okay, so we're going to take 96 and we're going to again divide it by 10 because 10 is how many boxes we have, and that gives us 9.6. Again, 9.6 is not easy to count up by, so we're going to round that up to 10, which means on this side we're going to count it by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. All right, so now we have everything labeled and we can go through and put in our points. Now remember, we're graphing only the average. So you should have already calculated this average before, and it was 16. So you want to just plot the point. When the floating surface area was 25, the average was 16. So you use the closed point. You select that, and that tells us, that means at 25 we have to go up to about 16. Now you are just kind of estimating, so halfway between would be 15, so you want to go up just about one more. So that would plot our first point. The next one is at the floating surface area of 100, the average was 29. So again, we still have the point selected. We're going to go to 100, and we're going to go up to 29, and drop a point. Then our next one is at 225, our average was 96. So we're going to go all the way to 225, and we're going to go up to about 96. X and drop a point. Okay? Then you're going to use this line. You don't want to use this line or this line because this line basically kind of does like a best fit line or draws an arrow. We don't need to draw an arrow. So if I do that, it's not going to connect correctly. So if you accidentally choose the wrong thing like I just did, then you just click the undo button. So in this case, we're going to use this line. We're going to connect. Oops, there we go again. Okay, we're going to select this line. Connect this line or this dot to this dot. Connect that dot to that dot. And connect back to 0. So this basically makes our graph. That's all we have to do. And then we would press OK at the bottom, and this would submit the graph. So once you press OK at the bottom, you can see your graph in there, so you can tell that it's saved, and then you can move on. And you can X this out and move on and go to your next question. So here's the graph again. So remember, when you make your graph, most important points, make sure that you title it independent variable versus your dependent variable. Label your y-axis with your dependent variable. Label your x-axis with your independent variable. Make sure that you number the graph correctly where you're going up by the same increments. And remember, to find that, you take your highest data point and divide by the number of spaces that you have. And same for the y. Take the highest data point and divide by the number of spaces that you have. If the number comes out funky, round up, make it easy to count by, and go from there. If you have any questions, make sure that you ask me. This is meant to help you so that you are prepared for the map test, and when it comes around, you're not frustrated and you're ready to go. So now you need to practice by taking the data that's on your Do Now, and you are going to graph it on this training thing. So ignore the data that they give you that we just went over and try it with the data that I gave you. When you finish, you need to take a screenshot. And in order to take a screenshot on the Chromebook, basically what you're going to do, let me get my Chromebook real quick. Sorry. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to press the control button, plus at the same time you're going to press, if I can show it. This is harder than you think, guys. You're going to press that number that's right, or that button that's right above the number 6. Can you see it? Right there. Okay? You're going to press Control plus that button. So the button that's right above the number 6, it looks like a little box with 3 little lines after it. You're going to press those both at the same time. And that's going to give a screenshot. And then you're going to send me that screenshot in an email. So you'll basically attach it as an image and send it to me, and then I can see that you completed the graph, and I can see that you completed it correctly, and I can give you your grade. Let me know if you have questions. Hopefully this helps, and we are more than prepared for the map test. You guys have been totally surprising me and making me very happy with how much you already know, and so I just want to make sure that all the stuff that you know doesn't go unnoticed just because they make this graphing so difficult. So, good luck. Let me know if you have questions.